some of the Nagarjuna's sort of writing. So he, as an Indian, he feels very proud. The quantum physics in the world is quite new. But in ancient Indian thought, 2000 years ago, already have these concepts.
Modern psychoanalysis is only just beginning to touch the fringes of what, I'm not talking, when I talk of yoga, not only the exercises, which are known as yoga generally, but of the much deeper yoga, the inner yoga, the study of consciousness. That is something I think that the West can learn a lot from India.
What is unique about these practices is that they are capable of inducing what has been physiologically termed as the relaxation response. This is actually a neurophysiological response, a change in the nervous system, in the brain. When one controls one's attention in a focused manner, there's changes that take place in brain activity. As these practices are continued, there's actually changes in brain structure that accompany this control of attention. So from a neurophysiological standpoint, when you engage attention, you are engaging frontal lobe activity in the brain, which inhibits the stress response, which inhibits the emotional brain and exerts control over the emotional brain. So as a consequence, that explains why when people practice yoga, they experience this sense of calmness, this sense of peace, this sense of harmony. And when we look at them scientifically, they're basically validating what people have experienced in these practices for thousands of years.
We made some initial pilot studies with the autonomic nervous system, and it was very interesting. We found that yoga has the possibility to modulate the autonomic nervous system in various ways. Autonomic, the name has been given because it was believed in medical science that this autonomic system is something which is not under voluntary control, and hence given the name of autonomic. But one finds that during the process of yogasanas, both sympathetic and parasympathetic components, they can be modulated by the process of yoga. In fact, several yogasanas, they produce a modulation of parasympathetic system, which is akin to a state which is normally produced in deep relaxation or in deep sleep. So in other words, a person is quite active, physically quite active, fully awake, and yet his body is experiencing physiologically a state of deep relaxation, something akin to a kind of a deep sleep. We believe that findings like these perhaps could be underlying the beneficial effects of yoga, which are found there across many illness categories.
Some people say yoga is a religion, and some people that say that yoga is not a religion. Yoga does not have the boundaries, the limitations, the dogma of religion. So what I would say is that yoga is cultivating spiritual experience at an individual level. Religion tends to tell you what God is or what truth is. Yoga has a philosophy that's very important, but more than the philosophy is the direct experience of truth for yourself.
I believe that yoga does not meet the criteria of a religion, because yoga is not based upon belief.
Well, let me say that those musicians with whom, while listening to whom I experience a kind of an aesthetic abstraction that is beyond the technicality of the music or the technicality of the experience, I think were definitely great meditators, whether they knew they were meditators or not. I really feel that the real musicians and the real artists and the real painters who were completely in surrender. Bhakti is actually what? It is about an immersion, it's about a surrender, it's about giving up oneself to something. And what that something is to me is not the point. But can we create that attitude of surrender? And in the attitude of surrender, you don't exist in a way. See, at the base of art, at the real core of art, lies the fact that the artist does not exist. So, what exists is the other question, the immediate question. What exists is existence.
So when you sing, when you perform, even though you perform for an audience in concerts, the music must transport you to such a level where everything else is forgotten. Only that bliss remains. So that is the kind of yoga that Nada can help. And this kind of experience comes very easily through music. That is yoga. That is yoga, because you are in a state of yoga is path that leads you to eternal bliss.
Kalari is a martial art from Kerala, and to me it provides what I imagine to be the same kind of connection between mind and body that daily practice of yoga would permit.
People of Japan implement that yoga to martial art like karate or Shorinji practice like that.
When we speak of martial arts and why we need them, an answer most people will give is self-defense, right? But the question is, what exactly are you defending yourself from? We live in an age of unquiet. Some people call it Kali Yuga. We daily wake up, read the newspaper, and see the terrible things that human beings are doing to each other. And helping you heal from all the daily attacks on your mind and your body and your soul that every individual in the world faces today. This is where I see the need for that kind of discipline and focus and balance and precision of thought, precision of movement, precision of deed. We need to be able to counteract these forces that actually stem from within us. We need to be able to transcend those impulses within us.
Today, this ancient science has been accepted and verified by modern medical and scientific research. Considerable more study is ongoing of the wide-ranging benefits of yoga.
It is something similar to reducing environmental pollution for your physical health or getting vaccinated against polio. So a health prevention strategy against stress for mind could well be yoga.
I remember very well the first years, some people said yoga, or it's esoteric, and yes, some postures, or what about that breathing? But this has changed dramatically. So when I now have conversations with standard conventional cardiologists or oncologists, everybody there is aware that yoga has a large healing potential. We don't discuss controversially anymore.
When you look at the surveys of popularity of yoga, it is actually restricted to a very narrow demographic of the population. It is largely people who are well educated, who have high incomes, and who are certain regions of the country and certain demographics. So a very privileged element of society is practicing yoga. And that leaves the people who perhaps need yoga the most, the lower classes, the people in poverty. These people have no access or ability to engage in these practices. And the way we can solve that is to bring yoga into societal systems that penetrate to all levels of the population. And as I mentioned previously, there's two systems. One is the education system. It's mandated that everyone get an education. So if we bring yoga into the schools, we can then penetrate this demographic to reach the entire population. The other place that we can bring yoga is into the medical system because it has medical value and because everyone ultimately has interaction with a medical healthcare provider.
The president of Brazil recently said that he would like that particular system of meditation introduced into all the schools in Brazil. We only hope that more countries will follow suit.
What's remarkable is in the most recent survey in 2012, 8.9% of the population was recorded as having practiced yoga within the past year. And in answer to a question of how many of the respondents had ever practiced yoga, that was over 13% of the population. So this is a substantial fraction of the US population, which suggests that 30 million Americans, or perhaps more, are actively practicing yoga. We have no endogenous techniques for coping with stress. As a society, we do not teach our children any practices to allow them to cope with the stress of life or emotion regulation. These practices, which are basic fundamental needs of human beings, are not being taught in our schools. Our schools are basically factories to produce worker bees. If you have an entire population, 3 generations say, of people who have practiced yoga in the schools, you'll have an entire population with these practices. That means, as a whole, on the entire planet and nation to nation, you have less aggression, less greed. That turns into less war, less unfairness in terms of poverty and wealth. You're talking about a better society, a better world as a whole.
The more people meditate, the more people experience that inner peace and that connectedness to the divine fulfillment and joy in their own lives, the more they become loving, serviceful, harmonious, understanding individuals. And on that can be built a completely new world.
Yoga may be the answer to the problems of the degeneration of physical and mental health which the world is facing today. An answer which leads to warmth, love and morality in all our lives. It also holds the promise of self-knowledge and emancipation.